This conference will now be recorded.
Good afternoon, everybody, ladies and gentlemen. Assalamu alaikum. Today we have a webinar session talking about the secret recipe for franchising your business. We have lined up guest speakers who are going to present very attractive topics, inshallah, with regards of the franchise concept in the UAE. A couple of housekeeping rules. Please keep your mic mute all time, and then we will have also emails shared, or in the chat box you can drop your questions, and we have the organizers team to provide the answers and help us in the Q&A session. And also we will be interacting with the audience at the end of the session, inshallah. We also would like to say that the session will be recorded and will be published in a YouTube channel. So we will be sending you a link with survey and also the YouTube link, and anything else you will receive it as a post session follow-up. Don't forget us to follow up with us on social media. So we are available on all accounts. We post latest happening of what the corporate group is doing in town and in the UAE in terms of activities and webinar sessions every month. So please follow us, and you can see all the updates over there. As you can see, the major happening we had for the last couple of weeks is the new relationship between Israel and UAE, and the bilateral agreement that started already, in which it's going to bring a new load of opportunities into the UAE, including franchising concepts. And these are all new opportunities to tap on, available for all businesses, startup and SMEs to do business here in UAE. And we are available to support the ecosystem and bring the players and the stakeholders in one platform to do business and grasp the opportunity of what the UAE has to offer for all locals and foreigners. Would like to present the first speaker and introduce to the audience. Her name is Benish Haidar. Benish is a legal professional with 10-year PQE, having experience in corporate, commercial, dispute resolution and advisory across common and civil law jurisdictions. She holds an LLM and international comparative law from the National University in Singapore, and has admitted in the bar since 2010. Benish previously managed the corporate and commercial division at the legal group, and after 5 years, she then set up her own firm, focusing on bespoke legal solutions for startups, SMEs, and established companies. For now, I will pass the microphone to her, and I will let her to give us her presentation and walk us through her topic. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ayman. Can you please confirm if the volume and everything is okay and everybody can view my screen?
Yes, we do.
Perfect. Thank you very much. My name is Binesh. I'm the managing partner of a very recently new startup, which is Lex Consortia Legal Consultancy. One of our expertise remains to be around franchising your business, which is why I'm thankful to the corporate group for giving us this opportunity today to share what our expertise in the field has been. The idea remains to not only give you legalese around franchising, but also give you practical insight around franchising. So we'll begin and we'll try to keep it short and crisp so that the knowledge is optimized. If anybody has any questions, there is a Q&A session after and we can take it on from there. So we've briefly spoken about Lex Consortia. I don't think there's much need to speak about me, but this is a brief profile about me. Okay, the first thing about franchising, when you start asking about franchising, and I think like how Eamon also mentioned that UAE, number one, is a hub. Number two, UAE is also globally and geographically very well located. So it gives rise to a lot of franchising, distribution, commercial agency opportunities. So the first question that I put forth today to the audience is, what is your purpose of franchising? Whether you are an audience from a UA market, a GCC market, or a non-GCC market, number one. Number two, are you the franchisor or the franchisee? Because if you're the franchisor, your purpose of franchising will be different. And if you're the franchisee, that purpose will be very different. So how normally, like we said, this will also be in, the purpose of this will remain to give you practical insight. So first you need to ask yourself, is your purpose growth? A lot of franchisors extend into franchising when they start growing. When you start growing, the first question that should essentially come to your mind is whether franchising is a suitable model, or is there any other model that is more suitable? That will be a very different and a separate discussion, but there are other models pertaining to growth, which are distribution, commercial agencies, corporate structuring, restructuring, and franchising is also one of them. The main reasons why entities go out to franchise and grow through franchise is also because franchise allows them to retain a control over their enterprise. Once you retain that control, you can have your branding guidelines, you can have your corporate structure guidelines, you can have your marketing guidelines, and you can have your training guidelines in place. So in order to compact all that and retain control over that, a lot of entities globally, you have McDonald's, you have Burger King, you have Subway, they go out and franchise so that their goodwill, their brand guidelines, their trading guidelines, their corporate presence remains to be the same. So a franchisee in that perspective cannot go out and market themselves as the independent franchisee, but have to remain within the purviews granted by the franchisor. That is where we come to the next question, which is, what is the nature of the franchise? There are three different types of franchises, which are also explained here, but I'll brief right now. Whether you are giving or being granted a countrywide franchise, whether you're giving or being granted a regional GCC franchise, or whether you are being given or granted a particular emirate franchise, or whether you are being given or being granted an independent shop franchise. For example, Tim Hortons, Starbucks, they have their own internal rules that there cannot be any Tim Hortons, any Starbucks within particular square feet or limit of a territory within a country as well, or within an emirate as well. So there are certain geographical guidelines as well when granting franchise and when acquiring a franchise as well. So it's very important for you to understand what your franchise is granting you. Is it regional, country, emirate, or single franchise? Then we move on to our next question, which is again, this is a very specific aspect pertaining to the UAE and also the GCC, where you have a lot of family groups that own a lot of franchises. So the international players have actually not penetrated directly into the market. What they've done is they've given country franchises to the family groups, and subsequently under this franchise agreement, they also allow those groups to sub-franchise subsequently into different emirates. So that is also a very essential question to ask, whether you are purchasing the franchise or you're paying for the franchise from the international player, or you are getting it from the country franchisor as well. The main reason now comes in the legal. The main reason we advise clients to understand that is because if you are acquiring directly your franchise from the international franchisor, in that perspective, you will then have a franchise agreement. However, if you are acquiring the franchise from a country franchisor, you will be a sub-franchisee. In that perspective, the terminology of the contract will be different. So that is also very important for you to understand. Again, every aspect we can go into depth, but time is of constraint right now. So we have to be very specific about these. Anybody who has any specific questions can ask us at any time. Now we go on to whether you are, again, acquiring directly, number one, or going through a sub-franchisee, number two, or going through a seller acquisition. For example, a lot of time, small marketplaces also purchase franchises from sub-franchisees themselves. So for example, you may be one franchisee of one entity of McDonald's in Dubai. And then you may be like any business wanting to sell that particular McDonald's franchise. You actually have to seek permission from your franchisor. Once you obtain that permission, you also have to introduce the new sub-franchisee that you're looking to sell this business to. In that perspective, there will be 2-3 things that would be the legal purview of the transaction. One would be as that new sub-franchisee, one would be the transaction that you'll have and the approvals that you'll have from the franchisor. Then your transaction as a seller-buyer transaction from that independent franchisee holder of, say, McDonald's, who's giving you that franchisee of that one outlet only. That will be a seller acquisition transaction. In this sense, you also have to understand that when you're franchising, you're not only franchising products. For example, the taste of McDonald's or Subway or Starbucks has to be the same globally. So you basically not only franchise your goodwill, your brand guidelines, you also franchise the product and you also franchise your business model. So once you are putting your mind to acquiring a franchise, you need to understand that you would be abiding by all these aspects of the franchisor. And for franchisors to start franchising their business, they have to have separate guidelines for how they will franchise the product, how they will franchise the business model, and how they will franchise the brand guidelines as well. There is a very minor aspect around this, which is also very significant to consider, which is pertaining to intellectual property. You cannot franchise your intellectual property, but of course, because around the brand guidelines, one of the franchisor's requirement is that the same intellectual property be used. For example, the same Subway branding, colors, everything has to be the same, including the trade name, including visually how it looks as well. So you also are granted a license to the intellectual property. For the franchisors, they need to understand the tenure of the IP license as well. And the franchisees need to understand that they cannot independently market themselves. They may have an internal agreement with the franchisor based on the internal revenue of that particular shop and how they gain benefit of that, but they have marketing guidelines and they have intellectual property guidelines as well that they have to ensure. So once you are going into, say, a independent seller acquisition, you actually, if you are the seller selling that one independent franchise, you have to give away your intellectual property rights and licenses that you've been granted as well. And later you cannot use those intellectual property rights because you are not that franchisee anymore. Now we move on. Once you understand the concept behind franchises, the next step is, what are your corporate and regulatory structure? Eamon will also be giving you insights on the regulatory structure, so I will not give you much about, or I'll not talk much about it. But what's important for you to understand is, and that's essential, depending on which kind of franchise you're acquiring, because we get a lot of inquiries about franchise and a lot of potential inquiries where people actually are unaware about how to take start in a franchise when they're the franchisee. So it's very important for you to understand that depending on the nature of the franchise, that is how you will then have your corporate structure. Again, Eamon will be guiding you about this, but a brief example is if you are going into F&B franchise, then your independent corporate structure has to pertain to food and business and restaurants only. But if you're going into, say, products, for example, say Nike or Adidas, you will have to go into a trading structure. So again, Mr. Eamon is the right person to guide you about it, and he will give you insight on that. But this is also very important to consider. So first aspect is ask yourself the questions, why the franchise? You need to know what you have to abide by. And then you have to move on to what kind of structure will you set up for that franchise. The next part is also, I would not say the most essential till you have a corporate structure. Once you have a corporate structure, this becomes the most essential aspect of franchising, which are your documentation. Again, are you franchising directly from the franchisor, or is the franchisor penetrating first time into a new country? Because we have different kinds of audience. There may be audience who is looking to penetrate for the first time in the GCC. So it's very important for you to have a very professional franchise agreement sorted out with all your guidelines. One of the main aspects in franchise is to ensure that the integrity of the business remains. So you need to have a marketing guideline, you need to have a branding guideline. You also need to decide with the franchisee about the budget, the fee that you'll be getting, because normally there is a base fee and then there is a yearly fee depending on the revenues as well of that franchise. You also have to set, as a franchisor, we would advise you to set targets as well. Even though in the current circumstances, targets is not the ideal provision to have. However, if you're the franchisor, you also need to ensure that the business continues to grow, whether through franchise as well, because the ultimate ownership of the brand will remain to be of the franchisor. If you are the franchisee, then you also need to understand what is your leeway when meeting that target. If you're able to meet that target on a monthly basis, quarterly basis, or yearly basis, how are you distributing or sharing revenues? What is the marketing percentage that you have to invest from the revenues into the marketing of that business, following the marketing guidelines? How often would you be getting training from the franchisor? So these aspects are very important to have in your franchise agreement. Unless you do not have a very laid out detailed franchise agreement, the franchise is not likely to grow at the pace and the rate that it should, because a franchise agreement is possibly, along with the corporate structure, the only aspect that will keep the franchise very tight and uphold it. So that's very important for you to understand. Now moving on to the next aspect, which is a BTA. What is a BTA? If you, like the previous example that I gave you, for example, if someone is a sub-franchisee of one outlet of McDonald's, they're independently having this sale and purchase transaction. So in that transaction, then you will be independently dealing with the franchisor to get an approval about your franchise, but you will also be doing a business transfer agreement from the person transferring that business to you and transferring that franchise to you. So you have to ensure that you have all documentation in place for the sale and purchase of that business and for the transfer of that business in terms of asset, employees, each and every unit placed. See, if it's a F&B franchise, then there will be each and every inventory that you have to take care of as well. Like I said, targets also remain to be one of the main aspects which you have to take care in terms of franchise. As a franchisee, you need to know what kind of grace target do you have if you are able to meet or you're not unable to meet. And as a franchisor, you need to ensure what kind of targets which are realistic yet also pertain and support the growth of your business are put in the documents. One of the other aspects which is also very important, of course, is termination. We hope that anybody entering into a franchise or any business wanting to grow out does not lead to termination. However, if you do not think about these aspects, that means you're not fully prepared. So it's also very important for you to know, one, what kind of franchise and which country are you giving that franchise to, which city are you giving that franchise to, even within the UAE, so that you have your termination clause drafted accordingly, you have the governing law clause drafted accordingly, and you have the dispute resolution clause drafted accordingly. Not all disputes lead to termination, but there are certain disputes and certain non-fulfillment of obligations that will lead to disputes. So it's very essential for you as the franchisor to understand what are your most essential obligations, and if the non-fulfillment of those obligations is as essential that it will allow you to terminate the agreement. So accordingly, you have to have that agreement very tightly drafted as well. Moving on, again, now we move on to the corporate governance structure. So we've spoken about the corporate structure. We've spoken about the structure of your documents to be in place. Now, what is the corporate governance structure? I think I've briefly explained it a bit before as well, but it's very important for the franchisor to enlist what kind of corporate governance do they want the franchisees to follow through. And it's also very important for the franchisees to ensure that this corporate governance is essentially and strictly followed through, for the main reason that this may actually be a primary obligation for the franchisor. And if it's not fulfilled, it will lead to default and obligations and penalty and possibly termination or disputes as well. So it's very important for both parties to understand what are the training guidelines, what are the brand guidelines, what are the marketing guidelines, how many employees, and how will you again train the employees from the point of even uniforms of the employees. Because you as a franchisee need to understand that you're carrying the goodwill of that business. So unless you do not do right by that goodwill, the franchisor will not continue with that particular franchisee for the purpose of growth. The franchisor is also required to support the franchisee. So when I say marketing, when I say training, the franchisor is required to give guidelines and physical trainings as well, depending again on the size of the franchise, the size of the entity, the growth plan. The trainings will matter and will differ. If it's a small business, if it's a medium-sized business, or if it's an MNC, if it's a trading business, or if it's an F&B. So trainings vary according to that, but you need to ensure that there is a check and a balance amongst both, as the franchisor and the franchisee needs to understand that abiding by these aspects is crucial to the existence of that franchise. There's one thing which I've kept to the last of this slide, which is exclusivity. It's very important to know if you as the franchisee have the capacity and the capability to go in exclusivity for a country franchise. And it's very important for the franchisor to know if they're granting someone a particular exclusivity for a country or a region. Because if that exclusivity is registered, say for example in the UAE, then deregistering that exclusivity is not easy. So you need to understand as a franchisor, whether you're granting exclusivity or non-exclusivity. And as a franchisee, you need to understand that if you are opting to take exclusivity, then you need to have the right structure, strength, capacity, and capability as an entity and as a management as well to take on that exclusive franchise. Now moving on, there's also very important, and I mentioned this briefly in the slide, that you as a franchisee can protect yourself in UAE if you're registered. However, registration has a very high threshold as well, and it has certain criteria. You need to have 100% local ownership, you need to have exclusivity, and there's so on and so forth. There's some additional criteria as well. But once you're registered with the respective authorities, then you gain the protection of not just the law, but the procedures of that authority as well. While for the franchisors, they also need to understand that registration, once they give registration and once they give exclusivity, it is very difficult to take that away. So they also need to evaluate their growth process, that in the next 10 years or 20 years, would they be penetrating themselves into that country? Or would they be granting more than one franchise or country franchises, or would they want to opt for different franchisees? So they need to evaluate that and understand that. It's also very important in terms of each and every GCC country that you're penetrating into, because generally the law remains to be similar around GCC in terms of commercial agency and franchise practices. However, there are certain specifics which are very different. So the legal and the regulatory compliance around that is very essential, depending on the country that you are penetrating into and as a franchisor, and depending on the country for which you're taking the franchise as a franchisee. It's also very important that the franchisee ensures how they're going to be optimally protected, because in a franchise, unlike a distribution, majority ownership of the brand and the intellectual property remains with the franchisor. It is only possibly the assets and the revenue sharing that can be the ownership of the franchisee. So the franchisee also needs to understand that any franchise agreement that they enter into should also protect them. Then again, we move on to operations, which we've spoken about, that unless the franchisee very well does not know that they have to abide by the operation guidelines, the franchise will not continue. Similarly, for the contractual compliance as well, for the franchisor as well and for the franchisee, we've also seen circumstances where the franchisors have actually not abided by their contractual requirements, which means that they've not given the trainings that were required, or they've not been timely in their trainings, or they've not fulfilled all the trainings. They've not provided all the marketing guidelines. So if that is the circumstance, then the franchisor cannot stand up and object on a non-fulfillment by a franchisee if they did not provide the proper marketing guideline. Similarly, dispute resolution and termination is also an aspect for the franchisee to consider in how to protect themselves. I hope I have fulfilled the time. If there is, of course, anything else that I can answer, I'd be more than happy to towards the end. Please let me know. And I hope this time has been of use. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Benish. It was really well-informed topic about the franchise, the legality behind it, and the whole ecosystem around it. It's really a good a helicopter top-down view approach in terms of understanding the different aspects behind it. Thank you for that. And for now, as a reminder to everybody, please feel free to drop your question in the chat box, and we will be answering these questions at the end of the session, inshallah. For now, I would like to pass the microphone to our next dear speaker, Mrs. Rania Gamal, the Dean Chair. Rania is a competent professional with 12 years of experience in training development, HR, operations, and general administration. She has managed comprehensive tasks within the HR space and has executed many training programs successfully. Rania has a specific expertise in running successful method-oriented operations and taking initiatives for business excellence through process of improvement. She has Masters in Business Administration from British University in Dubai and pursuing her PhD over there. She is actually representing Dubai SME, which is one of sister companies of Dubai Economic Development Department, Dubai DED, and she will be talking for us the Dubai Academy Entrepreneurship, in which she will highlight on their program and the details. The microphone is to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Ayman. Thank you so much for the introduction. Good afternoon, everyone. I would like to greet all the audience. We'll start the presentation direct, since Ayman already did all the presentation. I only need to highlight that Dubai Entrepreneurship Academy is the educational arm of Dubai SME. I will be talking about the Dubai Entrepreneurship Academy, most of our services, the most important programs that can be related also to franchise, the topic of the webinar. I will share the presentation. Please just, Ayman, confirm that you are already.
We hear you, and you can start sharing.
Yes. Let me just check. We are Dubai Entrepreneurship Academy. I want to give brief first about the academy before highlighting our most important program. Dubai Entrepreneurship Academy, as I mentioned, is the educational arm of Dubai SME. Dubai SME is a specialized government organization in small and medium business development. The training and the consultation service under Dubai SME is open for all nationalities, so anyone can get benefit from our training program. We are the first academy in UAE in specialized in providing vocational and professional program and entrepreneurship. Our all programs are uniquely designed and custom tailored and delivered by a group of entrepreneurs. All our trainers and instructors are entrepreneurs running their businesses. Okay, our main vision is to foster a creative generation of entrepreneurs and pave the way of success to them. Also, our main mission is to guide ambitious entrepreneurs with different training and education services. We'll speak about them later. Our main objectives is support entrepreneurs in shaping the future, promoting the intelligent SMEs, and provide innovative training programs. As I mentioned, our program is very professional and vocational. It's not academic training programs. It's designed very unique, based on the entrepreneurs and small and medium business enterprises needs. We have a blend of services under Dubai Entrepreneurship Academy. We have our training services, we have CSR programs, we have online learning services, we have online training materials, videos, and online training as well. We have consultation services and mentorship programs. We are targeting entrepreneurs, but from different segments. We are targeting entrepreneurs from the early stage. We have the students. We are targeting students in schools even from year 8. Starting from year 8, we have a program for schools called Entrepreneurship Promotion Program to create the culture and the awareness about entrepreneurship. Because we realized from our experience in Dubai SME in working with entrepreneurs, creating this culture from the early stage is very important, not waiting until they reach university and start their mindset to be direct target to look for jobs and look for employment. From the early stage as the students is very good opportunity for them to start thinking about their projects, and their innovation level is very high. Also, entrepreneurs from different backgrounds, the home-based businesses, SME owners, and government employees as well, because there is a lot of government employees, because all our services in Dubai SME is targeted to UAE nationals, but training, as I mentioned, is open for all. So a lot of government employees nowadays, they are looking for another opportunity. They start to look for creating their own business, and this is our main role, to promote entrepreneurship among them. We'll focus more about the training programs, because this is the most important services under Dubai Entrepreneurship Academy. We have many types of program. We have the specialized program, the long programs, diplomas, and professional certificates. We have the workshops, and we have the seminars and webinars. This is the most important programs we have in the academy. We have the professional entrepreneurship diploma. We have the professional certificate in hospitality and restaurant management. We have the professional certificate in tender management. This is actually the last new program under Dubai Entrepreneurship Academy. We just started now to give more information and practical knowledge for our entrepreneurs and how to apply in tenders, how to prepare the proposals, the financial proposal, how to present their organizations. And we have also the professional certificate in retail management, supporting entrepreneurs in how to manage the retail business. This is the main concept of the retail management. The entrepreneurship diploma This is mainly the most general program and important specialized program under Dubai Entrepreneurship Academy. We have around 300 graduates from this program only, because this program is the main tool and main gave all the trainers and the trainees how to start business in terms of creating their own business plan, their own feasibility study. So this is very important program actually under Dubai, and it's generic. So I have a lot of business coming out this program in different sectors. We have retail, we have hospitality, IT, a lot of business, real estate. The hospitality program, it's specialized in the hospitality business, and we'll focus more about this program since we are talking about franchising. This program is a specialized program. It's long program. It's 25 sessions, and it's covered the main important and critical point that need to set this kind of business. Because actually, this kind of business, the hospitality, especially business, it's a bit tricky business. It's not easy as most of the entrepreneurs thought that it's easy business and has a lot of segment and we can target any segment. No, it's not like that. There is a lot of tricks in terms of feasibility study, in terms of finance, in terms of the managing inventory. So we are partners with this program with the Emirates Academy in Hospitality Management. They are specialized in hospitality programs, and we create this program from the scratch. In 2013, we have also around 200 graduates or 150 graduates from this program. We covered in this program a lot of important modules that really very essential and very critical for any entrepreneurs or startup want to start this business to be aware of. Developing the restaurant concept. It's very important to develop your concept, whether you are fast food or you are dining in or you are fine dining, whatever your concept. Every hospitality concept is different. There is different setup, there is different structure, there's different process even. Then after this, to start to think about the franchising. We're giving like franchising a secret of successful franchising. We cover it from both sides. Franchisor, because I have some coming to this program even 2-3 times. They attended the first time, they create their own brand. We'll give a brief about our success stories even now. And now they are looking to be a franchisor, to give franchise. But they are coming this program from different point of view, how to start look about franchising and how to create a franchisor contract and look to this kind of opportunity. And another startup, they are coming from the beginning, they are looking for ready to be franchisee, to get ready franchise, like for example McDonald's, but different chain of course, to start this kind of business as a franchise from the beginning. They want the ready concept, the ready structure, and those who already built on their brand, they are looking to expand in this kind of business as well. So also the profit and loss, this is one of the most important module in this program. We spend around 6 to 8 sessions only in the profit and loss, and hospitality finance and staff scheduling and creating the menu, and also creating the whole business plan of the program. By the end of this program, there is a job placement for all of the trainees. They went to one of the most famous Jumeirah hotel. They have full placement to see the operation, the practical operation, how to manage the restaurant, the fine dining, the catering, the coffee shops, before starting their business. This is most of success stories created out of this program. This is all new brands. Now this, for example, Srifels is looking to give franchise, because now he's one of the most famous restaurant in Dubai, and he got like for the 3rd year one of the best under TripAdvisor, one of the best restaurant among the world, not only in Dubai. I can share even this later with you. All this are under our academy, one of our graduates of this program. For example, Sheburger, this was home-based business before starting out to be a brand and have their own location, started from the home first. This, for example, iHealthy, they are selling, they have new concept for fitness and for also food. They are healthy food, and they have also their own support services. Ketchup and the Espresso Lab, this is coffee shop. Cafe Barbera, this is franchise. For example, I put this especially because of this session. This is in Ras Al Khaimah, not in Dubai, because our training also is open for all entrepreneurs from different emirates, different nationality. So she started the franchise in Ras Al Khaimah since 2016, and she's doing very well. This is one of our graduates from this program. This is more focus about our results. We delivered more than 240 programs, and we have around 19,000 trainees, and from the specialized program we have 500 graduates, and we have 388 successful projects come out from our graduates, and we have around 23 million support, because all our programs are subsidized, completely subsidized for all the nationalities, not only for UAE nationals. UAE nationals have special discounts in some program, but all our program is completely subsidized, very, very competitive prices. And our satisfaction always between 93 and even above 93%. As we mentioned, we are targeting entrepreneurs even and more. Most of our objective is to create awareness about entrepreneurs, because there is a lot of fusion. Even Dubai economy is based on small and medium businesses. 99.66 or 3, I think, it's based on SMEs. So focusing on small and medium businesses and creating awareness about entrepreneurship is one of our very critical objectives. So we trained more than 200 trainees, the residents of the central jail. We give them opportunity how to start business, okay, and how to create their own business model, and there is a successful projects. Also, we train more than 300 trainees from the people of determination. Also, we equip them with the essential skills of how to start business, and they start very successful business. And even the retirees from different government entities, because looking for a job is a bit challenged nowadays. A lot of graduates, there is no vacancy, the unemployment level is very high, so the SMEs and creating the awareness and developing entrepreneurs, this is very important. We have a lot of partners from different government sectors, universities, multinationals, organizations. We are creating a lot of programs with them for different segments and different communities. This is one of our latest initiative under Dubai Entrepreneurship Academy, and it's really very important in the concept we are talking about today. I hesitated to put this brief about the center, but it's really very critical about franchising. Intellectual property rights, protecting intellectual property. Since 2017, we started our training center, Intellectual Property Training Center under Dubai Entrepreneurship Academy. Our main objective of this is to create innovative IP training programs and creating the culture of the IP in Dubai. Because actually, and frankly speaking, the IP culture in Dubai is still very, very low, especially among entrepreneurs and small and medium business. Investing in brands, investing in intangible assets, it's very rare. Okay, this is critical for franchise. If you want to be a franchisor, for example, and you want to go for this model, you have to build up your brand. You have to have a very strong brand. In terms of having strong brand, you have to protect your brand. You have to protect your trade secrets, your know-how, your technology. So it's very important. For one of the main reasons is the lack of the awareness, significant value of intangible assets. Because nowadays the models of the organization has changed. We are not evaluating organization only and small and medium business based on their land, equipment, buildings. We are also evaluating their brand value, their technology, their know-how. All this very important in terms of expanding the business. When you take the decision to expand your business and try to, for example, to be franchisor, and there is a lot of a successful Emirati here, franchisor coming from Dubai, like for example, broccoli. It's coming from Dubai. It's one of the business started in Dubai, and now they are giving a lot of franchise. This is one of the very important concepts. IP protection is very important in terms of innovation, in terms of your protecting your brand, also the business as a in general. So we have a lot of programs all in IP under this center. We have the fundamental, the main programs, or the main general program is fundamental of IP right program. We have this program is very important, also the risk of violating IP rights. Because our role in Dubai, we are under Dubai economy. Dubai economy, they have department for consumer right, to protecting consumers from the counterfeit, the infringement products. So we did this program for the people who were violating and taking a lot of fines every year for selling counterfeit products, because they don't know actually what is behind violating IP. Behind violating IP, there are a lot of criminals, even like money laundering, like terrorists, like child abuse. There is a lot of scenarios behind this. Instead of their taking fines now, some of them, they create their own concept, their own business. Convince them, instead of you are taking this risk and violating IP rights and selling counterfeit products, you can create your own business. Also, we have the IP Innovator Guide program. This program, we are partnership with IPOS, Intellectual Property Office in Singapore. This program we delivered 3 times since 2017. Last one was last year. This year only we canceled because of the pandemic. This program is very important also for entrepreneurs, because they're giving them the insight how to protect your innovation through IP. It's very practical program. They visit all the trainees every year. They are visiting the most famous innovation lab in Singapore, DHL and Philips, and a lot of famous innovation lab. They took the experience how to create the innovation model and how they protect this model through IP. Also, a lot of government entities send their professionals and representatives to attend this program. This is the latest product under the Intellectual Property Training Center. This is Master in Intellectual Property and Innovation. This is the first master in this field among the GCC, in partnership with the AUD, American University in Dubai. If you want to register or you're interested to know more about the program, the registration already open. You can visit the AUD website and you can register. The program will cover the most important topics about innovation and intellectual property. One of our new coming, we will have full e-learning solution. Now we are shifting online since the pandemic has been started. We are using Zoom, Microsoft Teams, but very soon we'll have our e-learning portal. We'll launch it very soon with a lot of programs in innovation. And we have a lot of program also in franchising, successful franchising, the steps, how to be franchisee, how to be franchisor, all the topics under franchise. And the diploma, a lot of programs will be on this portal, a full e-learning solution. Time I won't finish this presentation with this so I hope the presentation was short and to the point, and thank you so much, and thank you, Ayman, for the invitation.
Thank you, Rania. It was really nice, informative information or presentation about what Dubai Entrepreneurship Academy is offering of related matter to the franchising and equipping the startups to have best skills and practices to deploy here in the region. And I will go now to my presentation to share with you and the audience on the corporate structure. I'm just going to share my screen. Okay. Okay, so I will be walking. I'll be walking you through the legal structures for your business in the UAE in general, and in particular that is tapping on franchising model. A bit of introduction on the franchise market overview of the GCC. Established franchises in the UAE and the GCC are really looking into growth model. As you can see, many franchise concepts and businesses we have here in town in the UAE. Some of them are local and others are global. So these tremendous number of franchise businesses are actually being presented here, and they are coming despite of the current phenomena of COVID. KSA food and beverage market is valued at $50 billion as a size and value, making the biggest market in the region with prediction to grow 6% over the next 5 years. And the UAE food and beverage market is valued at 35 billion, which means combined market value of food and beverage would be more than $80 billion, as you can see. Growing awareness of organic food and increasing adaptation of different cuisines are some of trends that we are witnessing here in the market. And Saudi Vision 2030 and UAE National Food Security Strategy to 2051 actually pushing the attractions of the franchising business to be here in big attention because of the domestic productions that needs to be produced here locally and make available to meet the requirements of these strategies. Increase social media by the youngsters and the young population here in the region. Many food and beverage concepts now are available over social media platform and online platforms, which is really easy to reach, and this the opportunity of having more franchise businesses and concepts available. Dubai is actually second to Paris when it comes to number of restaurants per million population, and this is really astonishing statistics for myself. I never knew that Dubai, it is really ranked very much up high in this sector. As Benish said initially, that Dubai is really the hub for food and beverage in the region, and therefore and many other sectors, and therefore it is very natural to see a growth, overwhelming growth in franchising businesses here. Dubai and UAE has two jurisdictions to choose from, mainland and free zones. In the mainland, it is obviously the wider geographical jurisdiction to cover, and that means more of business opportunities residing in the mainland. Comprehensive options of business activities in the mainland being much more than what is available in the free zones. And then there is no limitation of number of visas when to operate businesses here in the mainland, in contrary with a free zone concept. Can open multiple branches within the same city and also in other cities through establishment of the main company as let's say Dubai company mainland. In the free zones, you have full foreign ownership. You have single window of operation in terms of the authorities and administration services with immigration, with the licensing department and so forth. And you have also minimal or even sometime exclusion from all import and export duties, because you basically involve into import and re-export activities. Legal structures for operating entities in the mainland. So a bit of spotlight on the mainland when it comes to running your business as an operating entity for your franchise concept, such as, let's say, Subway or any fast food chain or any local chain as a food and beverage concept. You have sole establishment as a concept, and this is available for both expats and GCC nationals. You have the limited liability company, which is the most conventional legal structure to do business in the UAE and in the GCC also, because it is considered 70 to 80% of all licenses in the UAE are under a limited liability company. And for the GCC nationals, they can own single owner LLC as per the UAE Company Law 2015 Article 2, the amended law of the UAE company that is allowing a new structure for family offices to operate here in the region through single owner LLC. A civil company is basically multi-owners that is applicable for consultancy and service-based companies. It is basically all owners are jointly liable in full capacity, which is a bit unfavored from the limited liability company. And then you have the branch of foreign company or a representative office. Obviously, this structure, it is regulated through economic department and the Ministry of Economy, in which there are certain restrictions here for the branch of foreign companies, such as not allowed to do trading activities, and it is typically used for contracting companies and service delivery companies. When it comes to free zone jurisdiction as an operating entity, you have the three classical legal structures: free zone establishment, which is a single owner; free zone company, which is multi-owner company; and then a branch, whether it's a branch of foreign company in the free zone or branch of the mainland in the free zone. These options are available. And in the free zone jurisdiction, you need to consider crafting business plan and attending to certain requirements of each free zone through applying the required documents upon starting the step of setting up your company and towards the full licensing procedure to be done, and also obtaining the local authorities as approval processes from municipality maybe, and so forth. And that is all depending on the business activity and the nature of the business that you conduct in these free zones. There is something that is very commonly used through franchise concept and through similar concepts, which is structuring passive entities, and the passive entities we are referring to offshore setups and SPVs, which is a special purpose vehicle. The main purpose is to own assets and act as a holding company for the mainland limited liability companies, and these are normally used for properties, equity ownership, and intellectual property rights. They are also used to register and own shares of operating entities in the mainland. So, for example, if happen to be that the shareholding structure to be 51-49 in the limited liability company, the 49 shall be registered under the SPV of the foreign owner, and then all the investors and intellectual property rights will be vested under that entity. The available options, they are either through SPV such as DIFC and ADGM, and also through offshore setup companies in the UAE, and there are only two offshore setup companies as a jurisdiction, Jabza Offshore and RAK ICC. Unfortunately, it cannot be handling the issuance of the residency visa, so it's basically a company that is with a license and also a registered office that you have to register through a completed agent when it comes to offshore setups. And liability is also limited, so which is good feature to incorporate throughout your legal structure as a passive entity for SPVs, for example, and allowed to have multiple classes of shares. And these are some of advantages actually that these setups or these structure types they are offering, in which you would have control or on certain classes of shares such as ordinary voting shares, multiple voting shares, preferential dividend shares, and so forth. So which is unlike in the mainland, where you don't have much of control on classes of shares, as there is only one class of a share which you need to deal with. Shareholders can incorporate preemption rights, rights of first offer, and all other parameters around it, and the restrictions around it in terms of shareholders incorporation. You can play around with those parameters that favors you, and how you would like to set it up. So it gives you more freedom to control through these type of setups. So therefore, you have the operating entity that you set up, and then in the operating entity is you have the holding entity that governs the investors' relation and the registration of the assets, being intellectual property rights or anything else, by tying up to the SPV or to the offshore companies. It would be an ideal scenario to run the operation and segmenting and detaching the operation from the asset or the holding company. And these are some of the ideas towards tackling the franchising concepts and franchise businesses here. With this, I conclude my presentation for this one, and going back to the Q&A session. Okay, good. So we have a couple of questions that we have in the chat box that we'd like to pass it to the audience. And here we start with the first one from Keith Egan. He's questioning about what is required to register a franchise apart from exclusivity to register the agreements as an agency with the government. I'll pass the microphone to Benish in order for her to answer.
Thank you, Ayman. Thank you for the question. It's indeed a very relevant question because it's very important, like I said in the presentation as well, for franchisors and the franchisees to consider the registration aspect. One thing I want you to know before we go into this is that even if certain franchises are not registered, that does not mean that they cannot continue, they cannot grow. So kindly consider that. As for the requirements of registration, these are three main requirements. One of the first requirements is exclusivity. The second requirement is that the franchise in the UAE has to be 100% locally owned. And the third requirement is the notarization of the franchise agreement. So the franchise agreement itself has to be notarized. So it needs to be bilingual. It has to be exclusive. It has to be with an entity that is 100% locally owned. And of course, the territory has to be defined, because UAE will not register a franchise or a franchise agreement for a territory of any other country. So the territory has to be defined. So that also does not mean that if you do not define it and keep it open, and they will also still not register it. I hope I've answered that. Thank you.
Thank you, Benish, for the question. The next question I have from Bongani Niwenia. hi, I have a resto bar based in Cairo, which I would like to expand into a franchise in major cities globally. What do I require, as Dubai is one of the target markets? Rania, are you there to take this question, or should I give it to Benish?
Yes, but there is a lot of regulation regarding this to expand. There is a lot of setup manual, full manual for franchising. We have short programs in franchising every 2 months. We did a lot. If you're interested to attend our program is online. Okay, we have upcoming program on 29 of September. We will speak about all this. This is because this is full steps on how to create model to fit the and what's the required documents and the required licenses and everything regarding this. And what I saw from the question, you want to be franchisor. Okay, want to expand his business here in Dubai, right? This is right. This is correct.
Yes. Yes.
So yeah, so there is a lot of rules and regulations and process. It's not only we give all full training program regarding this. But if more interested about this, he can join us through our website. I will share it on the chat box. Register his name and he can join the class.
My microphone was muted, so
it's
I will
okay,
say
but I'm presuming that question was to me because.
Okay, go ahead.
But I think if the audience can read that question as well, but basically, in order to not repeat it too much, but the question pertains to franchising of services as well. The precise answer is yes. You can franchise, and again, this was also explained in the presentation very briefly, that depending on the nature of your business, if you're franchising an F&B, if you're franchising a trading, Nike's a franchise, Adidas is a franchise, Starbucks, Tim Hortons, Burger King, McDonald's, or if you're franchising a service as well. So yes, you can franchise a service. However, the process generally remains the same, but I would personally advise that yes, the risk factor is high because it's a skill set that you're training. So if you're training that skill set, you have to have your internal documentation to be very, very strict. And I think further strict than F&B or trading franchises, because it's all based on your training and it's all based on soft skills and it's all based on service industry. So there's a higher risk factor. That risk factor can be controlled by the way of documentation that you enter into. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Benish, for that. And the third question, the last one from the audience, is from Louis Balbuena. What normally is the duration of a franchise agreement or contract between two parties? What are the consequences of early termination if, say, the concept of the brand did not succeed? Thank you. So I think, Benish, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Eamon. Louis, I would have to say that is not a question I like because it has 10 questions in one. So basically, number one, and again, I want to not be a very lawyer here, but want to give you the right answers, which is the duration of the franchise agreement can be brought 5 years, 10 years, even 15 years. However, the duration of the franchise depends on what kind of franchise you're giving out to. Is it a country franchise? So for example, like I said, mostly the family groups here have the country franchise. If you're giving the country franchise, then it should be for the longer term so that they can then sub-franchise. Because if you're giving some of the country franchise, then they have to invest accordingly to get you the sub-franchisees. So that is your answer, that it varies, but yes, it can be from a medium duration to a longer duration as well. What are the consequences of early termination? That depends on whether it's registered or unregistered or written or unwritten, because we've also seen franchises which are not even written, let alone registered or unregistered. So the termination in case of registered, like I mentioned, is extremely, extremely tedious because you have the legal protection and you also have the procedural protection of the authorities. While the termination in a written agreement depends on your contract, You can have a general termination clause where both parties by mutual consent or any party by a notice, or you can have a termination clause where there's a default of obligations. So that depends on the termination clause. And if you have an unwritten franchise agreement, then I can only advise you once we discuss on the actual dispute. Let me know if that's answered. Thank you.
My final question is to Rania on your entrepreneurship trainings that you do. Do you have a mechanism in Dubai Entrepreneurship Academy in terms of following up and tracking those graduates, and on how do they do in the market once they deploy their concept? Do you look after them in terms of post training follow-up and the success that they are doing? Could you give a highlight on that?
Yes, we have. I mentioned our success stories. This is only sample for our success stories in F&B who graduated from the hospitality program since 2013 till now. We are tracking all our graduates from the specialized programs. Of course, for the seminars and webinars, it's difficult because we are not expecting the high impact from one-day training. But for example, for the hospitality program and the diploma, yes, we are tracking them after they finish the course, the process in terms of consultation. If they are UAE nationals, this will be more easier for us because we are under Dubai SME, so they can come direct to Dubai SME and start operating the business, start issue the license, start in the incubation, start funding the different services in setting the business. If not a UAE national, some of those success stories I shared are not UAE nationals, but we are tracking them in terms of consultation. If they need any support, they are attending a lot of our seminars, on the ongoing seminars we are conducting every month to get more information about the topics they need in. Yes, so we are tracking all our success story. Even I mentioned that we have around 388 projects from all our graduates.
All right. Okay. Thank you, Rania. Thank you, Benish. Thank you, Rania, for nice, contribution into this session. And I hope we put together a good program for the audience covering relevant topics and comprehensive agenda around franchising businesses here in UAE and the secret recipe behind it. And a couple of days ago, I have come across an article, a really good one, that says 5 deadly mistakes that can ruin your franchise and how to avoid them. I will be sharing the article with you as a good read material to go through. And we also remind you to participate in our survey, which you will receive it as a link after this session, inshallah. And we're looking forward to see all of you in our next webinar session. Thank you and have a good day. Bye-bye.